How to study for and pass your certification exams with less effort. I know you guys love that part right there, less effort. I love less effort. Anything that has to do with efficiency and proficiency and productivity and optimization, I'm your guy because time is of the essence. First and foremost, I know you guys noticed a little change. I changed the name of the channel to IPV Dre because I think it makes the channel a little bit more personal. It describes me, right? At this moment, right? IPV Dre. I'm all in with network engineering, studying for the CCNA, as many of you know. Oh, thank you for the 93 subscribers. This is the most subscribers I've ever had on any YouTube channel I've ever had, and that tells me that you guys are enjoying the content. You're finding value in the content, so I appreciate that. IPV Dre, still active recall. We're still focusing on tech education with the focus on actually learning the material. But we're studying for the CCNA currently. Although we're studying to take the certification exam, we actually want to master the concepts. This is why I have all of this equipment in the back. Also, I just ordered an Access server. That's exciting. Video on that is coming soon. I also owe you guys a video, a lot of different labbing videos of me setting up static routing, me setting up OSPF. I'm also gonna do a lab and probably an unboxing on the Access server when it gets to my house. I have a lot of videos that I need to pump out, but there's a reason why I haven't been putting out the lab videos. It's a lot of work to make those videos, to record them, to edit them down, and also study for this behemoth of an exam. So you guys just bear with me. I hope these little updates are good enough for now. This video is really important. I got the idea of this video from Justin Sung. He's a medical doctor in New Zealand. His channel is about education. It's about actually learning. I'll link his channel in the description. You guys can go to his channel and see what he talks about as far as learning and things of that nature, and you can see what his channel is really about. I really love that channel because of the simple fact that he is, first of all, he's an MD, and he's a teacher, and he knows what he's talking about when it comes to learning. A lot of the concepts that he talks about on his channel cross references with the concepts that I talk about on my channel as far as learning goes, and some of the techniques that I've spoken about earlier in other videos, and I didn't even realize that there's some, I guess, science behind it. I watched his video. I think there's this video called How to Learn Faster and Retain More Information. That video really put things into perspective for me as far as how to study with less effort, because it's literally what I've been doing. I'm gonna list some of those things in this video here. So now that we got all that out the way, number one, this is what I call the 3-coat learning system. It's an analogy that I piggybacked off of painting. When you're painting, you use the 3-coat paint system, right? In the 3-coat paint system, you have the primary coat, primer, then you have the intermediate coat, and then you have the top coat, which is the finish. Learning is very similar to that, or at least that's how I approach learning. I approach learning with a primer, or what Justin Sung calls, I guess, pre-learning. For me, that's when I read through the text one good time or multiple times. I just go through the book. You see all these bookmarks I have, and go to the chapter that I'm studying at the moment, and I kind of just survey the chapters, the sections. I try to think about what the high level or high order concepts are, which is something I mentioned in a previous video when I was giving some tips on how to learn the acronyms in the CompTIA A+ certification exams, right? I connect myself to the higher order and the higher level concept of what that chapter is trying to teach me. And sometimes I even get a little bit more high level with it and say, okay, how does this chapter connect to a bigger concept? And how does that concept connect to all of network engineering? Why is this concept important, and where does it fit in to the big picture of network engineering. I do that, right? I believe there was this other channel that I saw that said you survey, question, it's SQ and the 3 R's, right? I forgot, it's read, recite, and I think revise or something like that. I forgot what it is, but it's SQ and it's the 3 R's. Survey, question, and the 3 R's. That's how I pre-learn, right? That's the primary code. The intermediate code now is when I go through another reading of the book, and now I'm actually reading to learn the information. And I don't take any notes. I typically don't take any notes. I literally bought like 14 books the other day, and 14 notebooks the other day, and I don't take notes in sort of the traditional sense. When I take notes, I typically read a section or read a chapter, and I just write down what I understand about the high order concept of that whole chapter, and then sort of like piece the smaller order contexts or concepts into that higher level plane, right? So it's kind of like piecing a puzzle together. But I typically try not to take too many notes so that I can actually learn the information. And this is something that I had issues with in school, in high school, because I would just take notes. They taught me, oh, take notes. You need to take notes. You need to take notes. But, and this is something that Justin mentioned in his video, while you're taking notes, you're not actually learning anything, because you're sort of offloading the responsibility of learning to your fingertips, and you're not actually learning anything. You're just copying. He said something about us becoming really good photocopying machines or copying machines or something like that. And it's true. If you're sitting there reading through a chapter and you're trying to actually learn it while taking notes, that's a hard thing to do, because you're pretty much just writing. You're not really doing too much, right? So just had a notification come in, making sure that the video didn't cut. So the intermediate code is where you're actually reading through and you're attempting to learn the information. And we're gonna go more into that, the intermediate code of this learning system, when we go into the next section, because it's very important. We're gonna be talking about cognitive load, right? And that's another concept that I learned from Justin. Well, not really learned, but was able to put a name to, because it's something that I've been doing. I've been reading with minimal note taking, and I've noticed that I've been able to actually remember more of the material, understand more of the higher order concepts, even the smaller order concepts, without taking notes. And I was just wondering, is that ideal? I did it for the A+. I did it for both of the A+ exams, and I did it for the ITF. I'm pointing up there because my certifications are up there. I did it for my ITF exam as well. Didn't take much notes. I just, took minimal notes, right? Diagrams and stuff like that. And I was able to pass each of those exams. It was 3 exams on my first try. Now, I don't know if that technique is going to work for the CCNA. I hope when I take it for the first time, I'll pass it. Giving myself another 4 or 5 months to prepare for that exam and, pass it. But I'm noticing that I'm reading through the chapters. I'm able to apply it on my equipment, and we're having a good time, right? And that's another section that I need to talk about, right? So that's the intermediate code. You're focusing on actually learning the material, what Justin Sung calls the learning event. And I love how he pieces all of these things together, and he gives you a memorable way to, I guess, recall and recognize what you're doing in your process of learning, if that makes any sense. Now, the top coat. The top coat for me is to what I mentioned before. After the learning event, I try to, as close as possible to the learning event, which is what, again, he talks about. These are things that I've done and it works. He says 12 hours. That is too soon for me. He says 12 hours after the learning event, that's when you I believe he said that's when you take some nonverbal notes, as much as minimal nonverbal notes as much as possible. I usually wait a week, and this is where I'm gonna start to shift that in with regard to my process, and try to take notes or do some sort of active recall event within 12 hours of the learning event, maybe 24. It's difficult for me to do that because of the way that my schedule is set up. But as soon as possible and as close as possible, you want to be taking notes in your own words, though. You don't want to go back into the book and then start copying. No, you want to, and this is where the whole active recall thing comes in, go back in your memory and call up what you learned during that learning event, right? You want to be able to put it into your own words. You want to actually be able to explain it to someone. And I would say, yeah, go ahead and take the minimal notes and try to explain it to someone, right? I think that is an important thing to do at every step of the way. But we're going to see in the intermediate, again, the intermediate quote, where that part specifically comes in, where you're actually going to be lecturing and stuff, right? So the 3-quote learning system: primary quote, primer, reading through the text, very light, just kind of survey, see what the big idea is about. Intermediate is when you actually do the learning event, right? And the top quote, or the finish, is when you call up an active recall event, and you do it, you call up your memory of what you've learned, right? So that's the first thing I wanted to talk about. And this is probably not going to be in any particular order. I'm just going to call them as I remember. Stop taking notes. That's number 2. We already spoke about this. Stop taking notes. The reason why you want to stop taking notes is, again, you want to, and this is expanding on the intermediate quote, you want to increase your cognitive load. I think about it like weight training, because for years I've been weight training, and in weight training or power building or powerlifting, bodybuilding, there's a concept called progressive overload. Now, progressive overload is the systematic process of putting just enough stress on your muscles that micro tears happen in the muscle fibers, not real tears, but micro tears happen in the muscles. And the recovery stage is where those muscle fibers build back up to become stronger. That's called super compensation. And that's ideally what you want to be doing when you are expanding your cognitive load. And how you do that is minimize note taking or eliminate it altogether during the learning event. That is, while you're in lecture, for example, or in class, pay attention to what the teacher says. And again, referring to Justin Sung, I love his analogies. He says you want to increase your ability to sort of catch the information from your teacher, right? And he says also that it's important for you to be confused. Have you ever learned something, right? Read through something and it's confusing you. It confuses the heck out of you. You don't know what's going on. I had that happen the other day. And then you wake up, or maybe a week goes by, some time goes by, and you suddenly get it, right? I've noticed that happens a lot more when I don't take notes. And I think that's connected to our subconscious mind unconsciously working on the problem, right? So in the background, we have these problems and these things that our brain is constantly working on in the background. And I think attention residue has something to do with that as well. But I'm not even going to make this video too complicated. You are working on these problems in the background, and next thing you know, you wake up and you understand it, right? I like that kind of like duality of the mind, where you have the conscious mind that consciously, that's like that spotlight, consciously looking for things and trying to, bring things into the RAS, and your subconscious mind, if you're focusing on a problem, works on those problems automatically, running in the background without you even realizing it. And I've had this experience over the past few weeks with focusing on CCNA, working really hard on CCNA, and 2 labs that I did. I did a spanning tree protocol lab, and I did the OSPF lab, and there's a lot of moving parts in it. And while I was dreaming, I was sleeping, and I was dreaming up my lab, right? I was dreaming up the OSPF lab. I was dreaming up the spanning tree protocol lab, and I just came to my table when I, woke up, got my coffee, breakfast, and everything, and I put that lab to use, and I actually did the lab correctly. I had to work through some minor difficulties, but I put that lab together. That is the benefit of cognitive load. And when you're reading, you want to always, or even in lecture, you always want to try to get as much of the information, a little more each session, each learning event, as Justin calls it. And you want to take advantage of that overload that we was talking about, right? You want the information to kinda confuse you, stress you out intellectually a little bit, but you just don't want to write down any notes yet. Don't try to figure it out yet, right? Just keep it in there as long as you can, and then see where that takes you, right? So that's the whole idea behind stop taking notes, right? Increasing cognitive load. I believe it's called cognitive load theory, and it's a brilliant idea. Like, I didn't realize that that's what I was doing for the past however many years. Think about it like this, and this makes sense. The cognitive load thing makes sense. Have you ever been in a class, one of your favorite classes, and you notice that you ace those exams without taking any notes? You ace that class in general, and you enjoy going to that class without taking any notes. I think that has a lot to do with your level of engagement during the class. And what that does for you is it makes you actually focus on the information, and you can catch the information better. You're in this flow state, and you're creating all sorts of, like episodic memory, and you're just really engaged. Whereas if you are taking a class that you didn't enjoy, you're just like not really there. You're not really paying attention, and you're not really learning information. You're forgetting the information. The teacher calls on you, and you don't want to participate. Whereas you're enjoying the class, you're engaging in the conversation. The teacher asks you a question, you raise your hand, and you can explain the concept back. And again, active recall. It's a very different world when you're actually learning in that fashion. And I noticed that this cognitive load theory thing coincides with students who actually enjoy the classes that they're taking, right? Especially, this is why I say, at the basic, try to enjoy this stuff, right? Try to enjoy it. And the better you get at it, the more you enjoy it, the more you learn, right? So that's number 2, stop taking notes. Number 3, read, pause, lecture. This is kind of like another sort of like a cross-reference with what I've been doing with Justin Sung's video, and it just stuck out to me because he talks about pausing in each section. And I forgot why he said why you should pause, but I think it's similar to what I do when I'm reading through a text. So again, this is all like kind of like in the intermediate coat of the 3-coat learning system, right, that I've made up. In the intermediate coat, you're gonna be reading through and actually going section by section and trying to actually learn the information, right? What I like to do is I like to get into a chapter, again, survey it with the primer, right, the first coat, and then when I'm doing intermediate, I really read from section to section, and at the end of each section, I pause. I literally get up and start pacing my apartment, and I explain the concepts to an imaginary classroom or an imaginary person. I'm not schizophrenic, right? Doesn't mean you're schizophrenic, right? But I, lecture to an imaginary classroom, an imaginary lecture hall, imaginary person. And I act as if I'm a professor. I act as if I'm a teacher. I act as if I'm responsible for you understanding the material, right? I act as if I'm responsible for someone who's responsible for the material, learning the material, right? So the essential, it's important that you really behave. Behavior is really important in life in general, because you want to behave like you know the material, because you actually do know the material, right? You're going through the learning event, your brain is actually, it's picking it up. So you want to behave as if you know the material and actually lecture the concepts. Break it down into your own words. Explain it like that person's a 5-year-old. Explain it like you're responsible for them getting an A+ on the exam. And do that from section to section, and taking those sections along the way and putting it into the slots of the higher order concepts, right? Again, when I was explaining the concept behind learning the acronyms for the A+ certification exam efficiently, I mentioned having this higher level order of the concepts, treating it like it's scaffolding for a building or some type of molding that you have to pour cement into. And it's funny because Justin used the same kind of analogy, because that is what it is, right? When you're learning a concept of, something, I don't know, it's a higher order concept. That concept is definitely going to be broken into or consist of smaller concepts that make that big concept a whole, right? And it's important that you link each smaller concept to the higher level concept, because you need to know why that concept is important, and therefore you can really grasp the full order of the concept, right? And that's pretty much how you can actually learn with less effort, right? Those was it 3? Yeah, those 3 concepts are how you can actually learn with less effort, because you're not so much focused on the bodily movements of you writing, because that's all it really is, right? To me, at least to me, you're just writing, just copying. It's not really what you should be doing. But for a bonus, right? And it's not really even a bonus. This is something that all of us should be doing, especially if we're in the tech field. Apply the information, right? You want to make some sort of guess about how the information is actually applied in the real world and attempt it. Hence why we have the lab, right? Hence why I'm putting all this money into the equipment, because I love when I'm reading through a book, reading through the CCNA book, right? And I'm like, or I'm reading a Network Warrior, right? Or some concept on the internet. And I'm like, I wonder how that would behave in my lab. Can't really do it in the real world because production systems are just a whole other thing. But how would that work in my lab? And then I go and I spin up a instance and try it out, right? I remember reading through the ACL chapter. I think it was ACL. No, switch management chapter on how to put a management IP on one of the switches. And I was curious about that. I said, okay, I need to start trying to put, secure shell functionality on these equipments, because in the real world, I should ideally know how to remote into these systems and be able to troubleshoot, do some configuration and stuff like that. That's where the real utility comes in as a network admin or a network engineer. As per some of these channels I've been watching, I've been noticing a lot of network engineers who are on call have to get up in the middle of the night, hop on their lap. This is the laptop that I use to configure the Cisco equipment and all of that stuff. They hop on a laptop and they secure shell in, or they remote into their server at the office, and they start doing configurations. That's very important skill to know. So I said, let me apply it in the good old rack. Now it's not a rack, but it's just stuff on the desk. But let me apply it on that. And I had some issues at first, but I ended up figuring it out. Then I was reading through the ACLs chapter, how to apply ACLs. And I said, let me try to block secure shell access from a specific network. Played around with that, got that to work. And of course, I stumbled, I struggled. But through that struggle, through that stumbling, I learned so much. That was something that really taught me a lot about the real world perspective of having labs, really seeing how I can apply certain things, right? So yeah, that's the, it's a hypothesize and experiment. That's the, I guess the bonus section, if you will. I believe Justin Sung talked about that in one of his videos too. But yeah, like I said, this video pretty much was piggybacking off of that video. I'm going to link that video in the description so you can check it out. This is something that other people are talking about, scientists are talking about. And he's an MD, and he's giving a nice perspective, a real perspective on how to actually learn, you know. And it's something that I truly advocate for. Learn efficiently. Don't take it for granted. Don't say, you know, I'm just gonna get the CCNA certificate, the piece of paper, and, you know, just put it on my resume. No, I really advocate for learning, actually learning, and not being some automaton who just know how to, I don't know, answer questions. You know, of course, having good test taking skills are important, but it's important to have these things down pat. If you want more tips like this one, click right here, and I'll talk to you guys next time.